With negotiations still ongoing about a contract buyout and an AEW exit, could CM Punk never wrestle again after receiving a huge payout from All Elite Wrestling? We've got the latest on his possible departure from AEW. Shinsuke Nakamura is going to face the Great Muta in Pro Wrestling Noah, but did Noah have reservations about the booking because of their international partnership with All Elite Wrestling? GCW owner Brett Lauderdale gives an update on the AEW rumours about a bad relationship between the two. Bow Wow, could he be coming to AEW soon and facing Swerve Strickland? AEW Rampage does terribly in the ratings on Friday. Anthony Bowens gives an update on Billy Gunn, and a Ring of Honor TV title match has been announced for Wednesday's edition of Dynamite. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and we have to start off talking about what we're constantly talking about when it comes to AEW, and that is drama, that is CM Punk, that is Kenny Omega, that is the Young Bucks, that is Ace Steel, that is Tony Khan, that is all of the fallout from Brawl Out a couple of months ago with the Elite on their way back to television and CM Punk on his way out of AEW. There are still plenty of details that we're still receiving and updates we're still hearing about when it comes to the future or lack thereof in AEW of the former two-time world champion, that being CM Punk. Now, AEW may have soured on the whole CM Punk experience, but beyond wrestling, things appear to be looking quite rosy for the Second City Savior's future, with reports that Chris Jericho, who recently signed a new contract with All Elite Wrestling, has called CM Punk a cancer backstage, and suggestions that there had been a personal issue between Punk and Cody Rhodes that had in some way influenced Rhodes to return to WWE. Of course, the American Nightmare has denied such an incident took place. It's not a good sign for the remaining fans of CM Punk, hoping that he could, possibly, things could actually improve and he could return to AEW. It's not looking good. It doesn't look like WWE either is in a rush to pick up CM Punk, with Dave Meltzer having recently reported that there hadn't been any contact between either party. With that being said, though, it appears that Punk may not actually be in a rush to return to wrestling himself. Wrestling Inc. managing editor Nick Houseman was speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio today and said, quote, "Cash does not seem to be an issue for this guy. He's certainly got inroads in Hollywood going on right now. Stephen Amell certainly shining him up with what they're trying to do over there on Heels right now. I have a lot of people that have known Punk that say this guy's never gonna wrestle again." Heels, of course, the Stars series set in a fictional wrestling promotion, sees Stephen Amell and Alexander Ludwig playing brothers who are warring over their late father's company while trying to attract national attention. Punk has appeared as Ricky Rabies in the series, which has so far had 8 episodes and a positive reception amongst critics. We don't know, of course, if Punk is scheduled to return for season 2. I believe it might have been late last year, or might have been earlier this year, actually. When was it? That period of time where Punk was way off television during that whole Hangman thing earlier this year. I believe he was filming season 2 of Heel, so I guess he's going to be in that at some point in the second season, which is coming soon. But as far as Punk never wrestling again, look, as I've said a million times recently, and I feel that this year, 2022, is the perfect case study to back up the term never say never. And it is such a cliched saying, never say never in pro wrestling, don't rule anything out, but it is really true, and it continues to be proven. Look at the things that have happened this year. Vince McMahon retired from WWE. Yes, extenuating circumstances forced him to retire or resign, but still, he's no longer in charge of the company he helped build. Yes, it was built by his father and his grandfather, but Vince McMahon, WWE, the reason it is what it is today is because of Vince McMahon. He's no longer in charge. No one ever thought that was possible in his lifetime, certainly. He's not there anymore. Stone Cold Steve Austin, he wrestled in the main event of WrestleMania this year. And that's not even in the top 10 of the biggest stories of the year because so much stuff has gone on. So never say never. Of course, never say never. There was a period of time over the last 7 years prior to CM Punk signing with AEW that people said he would never wrestle again anyway. They said, well, he's never going to wrestle. No, if he's not going to go back to WWE, which it doesn't look like, he's never going to wrestle again. And AEW happened, and AEW came up, and he wrestled for AEW for about a year. And then this happened. So I think people saying he'll never wrestle again is somewhat far-fetched. I think that Punk... Ultimately, CM Punk came back to pro wrestling because he felt that he had unfinished business. And whether you like Punk or not, he loves professional wrestling. He's got professional wrestling in his heart. It's his bread and butter. And clearly, the way things are ending and have ended for him in All Elite Wrestling, that's not how he's going to want to end his career. That's not how he's going to want to end his legacy. And people used to say that about a lot of people. Someone like Bill Goldberg, right? I'm not saying CM Punk's like Bill Goldberg. He's far better, clearly, than Goldberg as a wrestler. Maybe you could argue Goldberg drew more money than CM Punk. Certainly you could have that debate. But people used to say the same about Bill Goldberg. Goldberg's never going to wrestle again. He's never going to go back to WWE. And he wrestled this year. And he's been in over like the last 5 years, he's been Universal Champion twice. Anything's possible. That's my point. So to say CM Punk will never wrestle again and doesn't have any desire to wrestle again, for me, is somewhat short-sighted. Again, I can understand why friends of his or people close to him would say that, but we've heard it before. And you know, money's a powerful influencer. And I think the reason that people say that right now, that CM Punk, he'll never wrestle again, or he might not have any intentions of ever wrestling again, the reason that people will say that is because of what is happening to him right now. He's currently in negotiations for a buyout of his contract, and the reason for that, my speculation is, and it's only speculation, I don't have insider sources and I don't pretend to, but I would think that given the stature that he held in the company, and given the positioning and given the money he was on, I would assume he probably had a no-cut contract or something very close to the effect of that. And because of that, you can't necessarily fire him without paying him what he's due for the remainder of his contract. So that's really what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a situation whereby CM Punk could be getting paid out for the remainder of his contract because AEW can't actually fire him. Because of that, you could argue if CM Punk signed, let's say, a 3-year contract last year, there's 2 years remaining on his deal, and he's on a multi-million-dollar contract, the highest paid contract in AEW and the highest paid contract in AEW history. So that's a significant amount of money if AEW is going to buy out and pay the remaining time on his deal. That's several millions of dollars. And because of that, one could argue that could set CM Punk up for a lifetime. And I'm sure it could. Absolutely it could. But at the same time, sometimes it's above money. Sometimes you have unfinished business. Sometimes you do have your passion projects, and sometimes you do want to right some wrongs. And not only does CM Punk have unfinished business in pro wrestling, but he also has unfinished business in WWE. So I'm almost comfortable to go onto the record and say I almost half expect CM Punk to return to WWE at some point. Is it going to happen this year? There's only like a month or so remaining, so I don't think that's going to be the case, or 2 months technically, November and December remaining, so that's not going to happen. And CM Punk can't wrestle until mid-2023 anyway because of his torn triceps. On top of that, there could be finer complications when it comes to his buyout of his contract, such as a non-compete clause, which is something that's actively being negotiated right now. So it could be a situation whereby he can't wrestle for WWE or another pro wrestling promotion until his original contract expires, if that makes sense. You see that quite often in football, when football managers are sacked from their job, they're placed on gardening leave, and essentially that means they continue to get paid by the club until their contract expires. That could be a possibility. Sometimes, they can pick up another job if they're willing to forego the money that's owed to them, if that makes sense. So that could be a situation that Punk is figuring out right now in AEW. So I think it's somewhat short-sighted to say that Punk will never wrestle again. Again, I can understand why they would say that, but again, this year has been so insane that I don't think you can rule that out. Shinsuke Nakamura has been in the news recently because he's been announced for this dream match against the Great Muta. It's going to take place New Year's Day for Pro Wrestling Now, part of the Great Muta's retirement tour, which of course Sting, AEW wrestler Sting, is going to be involved in too. And Pro Wrestling Noah reportedly wanted to make sure everything was fine with AEW before they actually officially booked WWE Shinsuke Nakamura to face the Great Muta, and a well-known wrestling manager helped to make it happen. Dominic D'Angelo of Wrestling Inc. has learned that it was actually Paul Triple H Levesque who contacted Noah to make sure the opportunity with Muta was still available, and it was Sonny Ono whom Noah reached out to regarding any issues. Noah wanted to protect the newly developed relationship with AEW, Ono stated, playing the role of facilitator. I made sure there were no objections from the various promotions. After it was confirmed, both parties had no qualms. The match was made on for Noah's New Year 2023 event on January 1st at Bukidnon Hall as part of Muta's retirement tour. Nakamura has stated that there was some pushback within WWE after he requested the match, but he was eventually given the thumbs up by the new regime. The agreement became official on October 26. Muta, of course, has had an extremely memorable farewell tour so far. He was part of a surprise appearance during AEW's Grand Slam week by saving Sting from being attacked by the House of Black during a tag team match on AEW Rampage. Following Muta's fight with Nakamura, Muta and Sting are set to team up on January 2022-2023 for Noah's Great Muta Final Bye-Bye, another partnership Ono helped bring together. Sting's joining together on Muta's last events as a wish of Muta, Ono said, who thinks it's great for wrestling when you break down barriers. I'm glad I could help make it possible. So I can understand why Noah would be initially a little bit concerned. They've just developed and just announced this relationship with AEW, and pro wrestling is nothing but politics, and I could understand why they might be concerned, we're going to book a WWE star to face off against the Great Muta. Is AEW going to be unhappy with that because their rival was with WWE? And to be honest, I think I'm sure it's purely precautionary, but I'd have been stunned if AEW would have had any issues with that. AEW has been nothing but open to working with other companies, maybe apart from GCW now, but certainly during the pandemic, they worked with pretty much every single wrestling company possible that wasn't WWE, whether it was New Japan Pro Wrestling, whether it was Impact Wrestling, whether it was the NWA, whether it was GCW, whether it was now DDT they've got a partnership with, whether it was AAA. They've been very open about, Tony Khan even coined the phrase Forbidden Door, so they have no problem about working with other promotions. Really, the company that Noah should be worried about pissing off is WWE, and if WWE's fine with it, that's a rarity, so you take it and you move on. So I can understand why Noah would have been a little bit cautious about it, but it's a massive match, and it's an announcement that's got a lot of people excited to see the match, and I'm really glad for everyone that the match is happening. I'm really glad for the Great Muta. I'm really glad for Shinsuke Nakamura, because from the interviews that he's done recently, he really wanted to make the match happen, and the fact that it is happening makes the retirement tour and the match feel like an even bigger spectacle, because it's a rarity that you have a WWE superstar have the ability and fortune to compete outside of WWE in another promotion's ring on any occasion. So I'm very excited to see that, certainly. Now, speaking of AEW working with other promotions, there's been this rumor recently about them forbidding talent for working with Game Changer Wrestling, and GCW's Brett Lauderdale recently addressed the rumors that AEW had made demands of GCW for the ability to use Jon Moxley. At the GCW Fight Club event on October 8, Jon Moxley faced Nick Gage in a GCW Championship versus Career Death match, which saw Moxley lose the championship following interference from W. Morrissey and Stokely Hathaway. In the run-up to the match, the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer had suggested that the match was politically weird, with the suggestion that Tony Khan wouldn't want his champion to lose a match on an independent show. Speaking to Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp, Brett Lauderdale weighed in on the idea that AEW imposed rules upon GCW over what could and couldn't happen, saying, quote, "I think, and I'm being totally honest with you, if there is such a thing, it's never been communicated to me. If that is a new rule, nobody told me that. I still have good relationships with a lot of the AEW talents, and I still discuss opportunities with them." Addressing the importance of Jon Moxley to GCW and the hopes of working with him in the future, Lauderdale was positive in his opinion, stating, quote, "Obviously with Mox, he's a lead story no matter where he is or what he does or who he's working with. So I think it's easy, and I can understand how people can see Mox's new arrangement with AEW and assume he's not going to appear in GCW again. It wouldn't surprise me if Moxley turned up in a GCW event in 2 months from now." He's equally hopeful that he can continue to have a positive relationship with AEW, reflecting that, "I don't think this relationship is dead. I don't think there's a ban. It may be there's always different guidelines in place. There are certain people that are available and who are not. The rules on how, when, and why, those things can change all the time. And they've since day one when we've had AEW talent on our shows. AEW has been very good to use throughout the years. Whether it's over or it continues for another 5 years, I've been very grateful." So sort of being quite non-committal on that, and I'm not going to say dodge the question, but him saying, well, if there are any rules, I haven't heard of such, and that isn't the first time he said that. I can understand why, I really truly can. I can understand why Tony Khan would be now protective, because he has saddled his company to the Jon Moxley bandwagon after things went really south and sour with CM Punk, and he's really committed a huge amount of money to Jon Moxley and a huge amount of time to Jon Moxley, which Moxley has deserved, certainly. importantly, he now doesn't want Moxley to be doing these independent shows. He wants them to be exclusive. And at the same time, when he does work these independent shows, he doesn't want his champion losing, because how does that make his champion look? It's one thing for Moxley, who's not the champion, to be appearing on indie shows and then putting over GCW talent. When he's your world champion, he's the best in your company, the best your company has to offer. You cannot, from a company perspective, have him go out to, whether people like it or not, the minor leagues, and having putting over other talent. I know you could say, well, nobody sees it, but still, it's all about perception. And again, I totally understand Tony Khan's position on this. I agree with what the GCW owner is saying there, whereby I think Jon Moxley could absolutely appear for GCW again. I don't think it's going to be in the main event. I don't think it's going to be advertised, and I think Moxley shows up, hits a paradigm shift, gets the victory, and leaves. And I think that will happen for a lot of indie shows. And I think that's the point that Tony Khan's trying to make there. So it'll be interesting to see if Moxley does indeed show up for any other future GCW shows. Swerve Strickland's called out Bow Wow. Obviously, there's been celebrity appearances, and there's going to be one Friday with Iron Mike Tyson. But on a recent episode of AEW, former AEW Tag Team Champion Swerve Strickland called out hip-hop artist Bow Wow, wanting to share the ring with Bow Wow. Strickland said, "I want Bow Wow. I'm calling you out. So I know you got connections with training with Rikishi. That's cool. Get your training in. I want you in AEW." I have no idea if this is going to happen. I don't think this is like a planting of the seed. I guess it's just Swerve calling out Bow Wow. He's been very vocal on Twitter before, so I don't know if that'll be a thing. To be honest, I don't really care that much. We'll have to wait and see. I want to talk about Rampage, and obviously we've got to talk about the ratings, because they're not good. They certainly weren't good for Friday's live edition of Rampage as well, because Friday's live edition of AEW Rampage drew an average of 378,000 viewers. Let me repeat that. 378,000 viewers on TNT, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. This is down a whopping 21.25% from the previous week's live episode, which drew 480,000 viewers. Rampage drew a 0.12 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic on Friday, which is down 7.69% from the previous week's episode, which drew a 0.13 rating in the key demographic. Rampage ranked number 27 for the night in the cable top 150 with that 0.12 key demo rating. This is down from the previous week's number 24 ranking. Friday's Rampage ranked 81 in viewership for the night on cable, which also is down from the previous week's 70 ranking. Friday's Rampage drew the third lowest total audience of the year so far for a normal time slot episode, and the second lowest key demo rating of the year so far for a regular time slot episode, tied with 3 other episodes. Now, I know what some people will say. There was a lot of competition on Friday, and there was a lot of competition, a lot of sports competition. It included 2 NBA games on ESPN, college football on ESPN2, the MLB World Series on Fox on network television, which really dominated the night. Of course, even SmackDown was moved to FS1 because of the MLB World Series. But again, it's still not a good number. And in comparison, and this is the key point too, in comparison, this week's Rampage viewership was down 39% from the same week in 2021. The key demo rating was down 52% from the previous year. The 2021 episode was also a taped show. So again, not good. Definitely not good. And it was a live episode. The majority, I think, for the remainder of the year are going to be live episodes. Yes, it was dominated by sports Friday, and a lot of people were watching the baseball, and I understand that. But still, Friday was a live episode of Rampage. It featured the AEW World Champion competing on the show, and basically nobody watched, and nobody cares. And if you didn't watch, it doesn't matter, because you didn't miss anything. And that's the problem with AEW Rampage. I know there are going to be weeks like this where you're going to have sport dominating, and because of that, people aren't going to tune in. But even to the point, it's like AEW knew. And as I've said, I think to fix Rampage, I think that it needs to be moved to Saturday. I think it needs to be moved from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and make sure it's live every single week. I know there are logistics that make that difficult. I understand that means an extra day of touring for AEW, which they don't really like to do. But ultimately as well, the booking has to reflect that it's an important show. The first few episodes of Rampage, people did tune in, yes, because it was new, but also because people assumed it was a third hour of Dynamite. And that third hour would feature top-tier talent, big matches, and matches whereby something important would happen. And if you missed it, you wouldn't be caught up with the latest AEW storylines, the big ones. Now, fast forward over a year later, it doesn't matter if you don't watch Rampage because you don't miss anything. And I think they've got two options. As I mentioned, move it to Saturday, have it 2 hours from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. or, failing that, scrap it. Replace it with Ring of Honor. Make that your Ring of Honor weekly television series, because Rampage is not working, realistically. And we'll have to wait and see what they can do with it. But I think already it could be at the point of no return, honestly. Anthony Bowens has given an update on Billy Gunn, Daddy Ass, after he was kidnapped. I forgot about that. Billy Gunn was kidnapped on Friday. Why didn't that draw a rating? I wonder why. Well, Bowens has provided an update on Gunn's condition in a recent social media post saying, quote, "I spoke to Daddy Ass today and he's feeling a bit better. Baltimore, you can make his birthday special this Wednesday night by bringing him a gift and your signs. The Acclaim will pick one from the audience to give Billy live in the ring." Obviously, that's hyping up this birthday celebration for Daddy Ass tomorrow. Does he have fingers left, though? Because Swerve Strickland implied that he cut them off. Speaking of Dynamite as well, we've got a title match, because it wouldn't be a show without one at this point. For Dynamite, there's a title match every single week. And Samoa Joe will be defending his Ring of Honor World Television Championship this Wednesday in a match against Brian Cage. It'll be Joe's fourth defense of the title after weeks of altercations between Ring of Honor World Television Champion Samoa Joe and the Embassy's Brian Cage. The two will fight for the title live on Wednesday. I'm sure the match will be fine. As I mentioned, it's difficult, and I do sympathise, because all of this ROH stuff has to go on at the moment on AEW television, whereby once you do get that Ring of Honor TV show up and running, it will help out immensely, but I would be very surprised if we saw a title change. But you never know. Maybe this will be the reward of Brian Cage putting over the likes of Wardlow and others in recent weeks. But there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.